Mike, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Where do you stand with some of the rules that are being thrown around here in Destin?
Well, Ryan, we've talked about this before. I think on a grad transfer, you should be allowed to go where you want to go. It's just my own feelings toward it. I understand there's free agency today in college football. So don't come up with it like all of a sudden this is new to the game. There's free agency there today in college football, in grad transfers going from one place to another once you finish graduating. So I'm all for it. Again, if that's the case and you feel so strongly about it, my thing is then an assistant coach can't go from one school to another SEC school. If you feel that strongly about it, block it. If a player can't go, then the assistant can't go. Why is an assistant coach allowed to do what he wants to do, go where he wants to go? He can get a team on probation for causing problems, and yet he's allowed to go where he wants to. If you want to transfer and you're not graduated, then you got to sit out the year, and that rule should stay in place. But I think if you're a grad transfer, if you've graduated, you should be allowed to go where you want to go. That's just my own personal opinion about it, because of the fact you've created this own free agency world of assistant coaches. The NCAA and basically college football's created that. And, I think it's a little hyperbole to say, well, it's free agency. Well, it is already free agency today. When you got a guy like Joe Burrow can leave Ohio State and go to LSU. I mean, he's different conference, but still, he's going to be allowed to go. He would have been allowed to go wherever he wanted to, despite the fact even the Big Ten at times has kind of pumped the brakes on that sort of thing. It is what it is. It is part of the new world of college football that all of us are going to have to get used to. And I think for most teams, they would want that. I think most coaches would want that grad transfer rule opened up, that if you've graduated, you can go wherever you want. Because most are chasing Nick. I mean, every one of them are. Not most, everyone is chasing him. So if you would have a chance to add to your roster, well, why wouldn't you want to do it? Why would you vote against it? I think league-wide, this is going to pass real quickly.
Okay, all right. So, Mike, let's say if we do this, okay? And see, I'm trying to see what Nick Saban's up to, because when we're on first base, he's on third base headed home. Okay, we're always, so something he's up to, because I think it's this. I think if he comes down here and he puts his feet in the sand, he goes, well, now hold on a minute. All I'm doing is abiding by the current rule that we have with blocking Brandon Kennedy from going to Auburn or Tennessee. All I'm going to do now is, if you guys want free agency, we're the school that's going to benefit the most. Because don't you think of the linebackers at Vanderbilt or at Mississippi State or Ole Miss, and he grad transfers, he finishes his degree, and Alabama's got a vacancy, and they got a pretty good team, but all they need is a linebacker, and they're going out there going, hey, we really need a middle linebacker. Then don't you think a team like Alabama is going to benefit the most?
I don't know about the most, but I could see where they would pick and choose. Because, Ryan, at this point, where are you going to come up with the scholarship? Okay, you got to have a scholarship to give.
Sure. Right.
At this point. And so what you've seen now in college football is a lot of transfers from the better schools, from the top of the mountain schools. If it's Clemson, if it's Ohio State, if it's, an Alabama or an LSU, these guys are losing a lot of those because they're not getting a chance to play. So they're going somewhere else. I think if we go back to how we grew up in, say late 60s, 70s, 80s, that you stayed. You stayed. You waited your turn. You waited your opportunity, and you played. Maybe you only started as a senior. But we're dealing with another era today of young people who aren't willing to wait. They aren't going to do it. They're just going to leave. And if that's the case, I think the NCAA is going to adapt with the times and go with that. I think it's an archaic rule to begin with, to put it that way. But I do see it where it's going to benefit everybody, not just Alabama. It's going to benefit if you've got a school like Auburn who needs a receiver and an offensive tackle, and two become available, and they have two scholarships, it becomes an avenue to go out and get one that's maybe wasn't available at a particular point in time. So I just think that every coach is going to be for this. I understand where Nick is going. Well, hey, we can kind of raid schools too, but the point is, everybody's going to be able to do it. And I don't think you're going to see that with top players. What you're going to see a lot of this is with players that don't have a lot of playing time at another school. And maybe are just frustrated. Maybe there's been a coaching change. Maybe they feel as though, things just didn't turn out right, so they're going to go somewhere else. And with these top schools, okay, if you're a halfback somewhere, and every year your school recruits a couple of really highly rated running backs, and all of a sudden, as a junior, they land a star player, and they have a guy that's a sophomore who's pretty good. When are you going to play? Somebody's going to give you an opportunity. So I understand where he's going with all of this, that he would benefit. But I think when you look at across the board, Dan Mullen's going to benefit from it at Florida. Kirby Smart's going to benefit from it at Georgia. Will Muschamp's going to benefit for it at South Carolina. Orgeron at LSU. They all going to benefit. And that's why I think this is going to pass, where that grad transfer situation, everybody sees the advantages of it. And the fact of the matter is just the way of the life of the NCAA. We can like it or dislike it. It's the real world today that we live in. And we have to change a little bit of how players look at their situation. We aren't looking at waiting time anymore. Patience today, it isn't there for players. They're going to go somewhere else, one way or another.
Mike, allow me to ask you just your opinion here. Okay, so last year Alabama traveled through the 2017 season with three scholarship quarterbacks, and that was Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, and Mac Jones. The plan was that they were going to travel through this year with three quarterbacks, right? Three scholarship quarterbacks. They've already signed some really talented kids. Coach Bryant's grandson, Paul Tyson, will be a part of the 2019 class, and then Tua's younger brother, Talia, will be a part of the 2019 class. So quarterbacks should be okay for the future. Alabama felt the need to go out. They've got three scholarships on campus right now. They went out and got a young man who was gray-shirted to Arkansas State to come to the University of Alabama as a scholarship, not an invited walk-on, but as a scholarship quarterback. So Nick Saban feels the need that he's got to go out and get some type of insurance policy there. Am I reading too much into that?
No, you read right into it. And again, that's part of the game that's being played now in college football. You can only, most teams are only going to play one quarterback, and that's it. You might have a second-string guy that came in similar to what Tua did as a freshman and saw a little bit of playing time. But I just think that, again, it's frustration. Again, Ryan, it's a different world where players now and also parents who are in their ear about, listen, you're not playing here, you got to go somewhere else. It's not just a player. Let's just, kind of put it to you this way. It's a family decision that when you make that move. And for a coach, you're trying to get insurance in case something happens, that you have an injury to a player. So you can see where the maneuvering is here. He doesn't know what's going to happen with Jalen Hurts. this offseason, has no idea what will happen there. So why wouldn't you go out and try to get you someone else, basically as an insurance policy? And the same thing is happening at LSU. 9 chance out of 10. Justin McMillan, if Joe Burrow would have signed or not signed, he's gone. He's graduating in the summer. He's out of here. That left LSU with 2 scholarship quarterbacks. Lowell Narcisse, who's never taken a snap in a college football game, and Miles Brennan, who has sparing time as a player. That's what would have been it. So they go out and get Joe Burrow. Now, I think it's a little different situation. In essence, I think Joe Burrow walks in here, and Joe Burrow's the starter at LSU. At Alabama, this was the insurance policy in case Jalen Hurts takes off and decides to transfer to another school. Bottom line, and everybody's doing it. It's not that free agency has just started in college football. It's been here. You can sort of see where they're moving the football chess pieces across the board.
Mike, as we look at this SEC spring meetings and some of the discussion, I mean, it is about grad transfer, but, when I look around the SEC, I see there's some veteran coaches in that room, but there's also some maybe up-and-coming coaches that when you look around the league, it's not a lot of veterans in there. You got Coach O that's been around the business for quite a while. You got Dan Mullen, Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban. But then you really get into some kind of inexperienced coaches that are going to be in that room. I mean, you look at a guy like Matt Luke. You look at a guy like Joe Moorhead, Jeremy Pruitt, Shad Morris. The list goes on and on and on. There's a lot of inexperience in that room in the SEC, too.
No question about it. I think the intrigue guy is Moorhead because of what he's inherited, where, you've got an experienced quarterback in Nick who has won a lot of games for you, and you've got a young kid who was from Louisiana who came in, basically, in a bowl game and played really well for Mississippi State. Your defensive line, even though they don't have great depth, that front 7 of Mississippi State's pretty good, really good, especially in that front line. Can they hold up over that stretch of time? I think he's the most intriguing of all the young coaches for me because of what he's inherited. He's got a motherload of talent to his, not only in his own state, but to the east and the west of him. He can turn both sides here, and he's got a lot of talent there. And he's trying to build on something that basically Dan Mullen pieced together at Mississippi State. But you're right. There's a lot of experienced coaches, but guys in new spots with huge expectations. You don't think there's tremendous expectations in College Station for Jimbo? The same thing in Gainesville with Dan Mullen. The heat's on here in Baton Rouge with Ogeron. Every one of them, because of the spot they're in, and they're chasing the ghost. They're chasing a ghost they're not going to catch in Nick Saban. Not going to catch him. I'm not saying every once in a while you might not have pull a W up, but you're in the chase position constantly. And the money that I had a friend of mine tell me this. Look the money they're spending on assistant coaches today. And look all the analysts that are being brought in. I think LSU in the last year of Les Miles, I think had 2. Now they have at least a dozen to 15 guys doing this. So you can see, Ryan, where everybody's just trying to catch up to the greatest coach in our lifetime and maybe ever in Nick. They're trying to catch him at this point. That's why they are in the position they're in. Winning 9 or 10 games wasn't good enough in Baton Rouge for Les Miles to stay. Look at what happened in Texas A&M. The same situation. Now they've brought in Jimbo. And listen, 8 wins, that's disappointing if you're going to bring in Jimbo and he's going to average 8 wins a year. That's not going to be acceptable for what you're paying him. Dan Mullen, same sort of situation. There's tremendous amount of pressure on the even experienced coaches to not only win a little bit, but to contend. There's only been one guy that's been able to do it, and that's Kirby. Kirby's been able to do it, and very quickly he's been able to put Georgia at a really top spot. And then listen, that was a lot of pressure on Kirby too. Sitting in that stands when Nicholls State in game 1 gave Georgia everything they wanted and had a lead in the fourth quarter against Georgia. Can you imagine how that would have went down in Athens had the Colonels end up upsetting Georgia? They ended up winning the game late, but still, there's only one guy so far that has been able to kind of go toe-to-toe over the last couple of years, and that's been Georgia. And listen, they're going to stay there. With that talent level, with the coaching staff they have, with the funnel in of talent in that Georgia area, Kirby ain't going anywhere. They're going to be contending for a long time in that East, and they're going to give you a lot of issues come championship game time.
Mike, there's also another big discussion here in Destin for the limiting the number of headsets that a coaches can actually wear, hand out. And, Nick Saban had a really good point. And I know he said, well, really what this goes back to is the NCAA trying to limit staff size.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, they know that they cannot do that because at the end of the day, somebody has a right to work. And if you got an employer that's willing to hire 100 people, even though you limited coaches, they could have analysts and staffs, support. And he said, really, what this goes back to is they're trying to limit the number of coaches that we hire, but they're taking about it with a different approach of trying to limit the number of headsets.
I agree 1,000% with him. 1,000% with Nick. I think this is backlash. That look all the analysts Alabama has and all this and that. Come on, if that's the case, then you go out and hire them. Okay, that's your prerogative to go out and get those type guys. Now, some are not supposed to be, in certain spots, but whatever. My thing about it is this is the NCAA trying to be big brother, feeling as though that's a huge advantage right now for somebody to have a headset on. And almost like trying to de-emphasize what the guys do on the field. That's the way I look at it, Ryan. I think it's more about control than anything else. I think the NCAA wants to have control over something that they felt would be a small potato issue that some schools have banged the drum about and they feel as though it's unfair. My thing about if you've only got 4 or 5 and you're going up against a team who's got maybe 12 or 13 of those analysts or whatever you want to, kind of label them, then that's your problem. That's not the other team's issue. That's yours. But it's all about control. And I agree with Nick 1,000% on that part. They're trying to control that. In essence, saying, and listen, I'm taking nothing away from coaching. Coaching does matter tremendously. But I think it's almost as though they're devaluing what's happening on the field. Aren't the players the one making the plays? I can make calls. Doesn't mean that they can execute them. It's all about the players. And I think that's where the NCAA's kind of lost track of all this. They want full control of everything, and you can see it in every move they make. This is all about them grabbing full control of every little aspect, or trying to grab every aspect of the game, away from the coaches and into their league offices.
Well, Mike, and I'll add one more to this, and I thought Nick Saban brought a sincere kind of plea following this up. He followed it up and said, we don't pay these guys very much. A lot of these guys are interns. They get started in this business. So in one sense, we're kind of cutting off our own hand because this is our feeder system. He goes, we're not supposed to get high school coaches because you cannot bring them on campus anymore to help you with your camps, and you evaluate those guys to see if they would He said, but also former players. He said, I'd love to add more former players. And you think about former players. Shouldn't we be giving back to the players that give our game so much? If they go to the league, let's say that they have a career-ending injury. And what do they know? They know football, Mike. They know football like it's the back of their hand. They would be good in a graduate assistant intern to get started in this profession. But really what the NCAA is trying to do is block them from coming back, not just players specifically, but what they're doing is they're blocking them from coming back and having an internship and getting started. And I thought Nick Saban had a really good plea.
The other part of that, too, isn't college athletics about helping you beyond the sports field?
Oh, that's baloney, though. You know how that is, Mike.
Come on.
I mean, the NCAA,
you realize that's what they say, but that's not what they do. Ryan, that's not what they do, because if that was the case, that bringing in former players who want to get into the coaching ranks, one way or another, that would be encouraged and something put in place to help you bring in former players back into the program. Aren't they the ambassadors to your school? But the NCAA, they say one thing and they do another. So, I don't believe anything they tell me, about anything. Because they have different rules for different things, different times of the day about everything else. But I'm all for that, the fact, and I believe in what Nick is saying about trying to bring in former players who want to get back into the, maybe a field because of an injury or maybe not good enough at the professional level, that they want to coach. They still want to be part of the game. Shouldn't the mechanics be in place that a school could bring those guys in? They're not making a ton of money, but you know what? Look at what some of these high school coaches are making. They're not making a lot of money either. So, but it gives them an opportunity to start. And I think that we should be encouraging that instead of basically saying, no, we don't want it. But we all for the afterlife of a player, but we're not willing to give you a chance. That's the control issue here. In essence, I can say what I want to say, but it doesn't mean I put in anything to back that up. And I'm on Nick's side on that completely, that there should be something in place here for former players to come back and coach. They understand this game. Maybe a guy who's played a couple years in the NFL, something happens either physically to him or maybe he's not as good but wants to stay in the sports world. I think that's tremendous. And wouldn't that be the greatest endorsement for college football of, we prepared these young men for afterlife and they're coming back and give to the school and we're giving them an opportunity. That's great to talk, but they don't do it.
Well, Mike, I think the other thing, and I promise you I'll let you go, but you and I get on these deep conversations. How about offering a guy, a scholarship, not a scholarship, but an internship? Okay, how about the players that are on the team? Okay, if they brought back, let's say a guy goes to the league and has an injury. He's 24, 25, 26, okay? Well, they have a better connection because they know what those 18, 19, 20-year-old kids are going through. Maybe it would help us with guiding them where we wouldn't have as many discipline issues. We would have a closer mentor because coaches are their mentors, but there's also usually, a 20, 25-year gap there. But if we had kids that were there as an intern, that could be another part of this system to provide the current college. I mean, it would be a benefit for those guys. I mean, maybe I'm just thinking outside of the box, but I wish the NCAA would try this every now and then.
Yeah, I think the other thing, too, Ryan, is kind of the connection between generations of understanding what, because today a 21-year-old and a 61-year-old, there's not a lot of things they have in common, but you just grew up differently, different world. And that's where a 27-year-old can be that connection between the player and the coach. Our coaches on the squad, that they could help you understand what a player is going through. Maybe that's a personal issue. Maybe that's a family issue with a player. and just try to work through that the best you can. There's so many distractions today. I think far different where there was distractions 25, 35, 45 years ago. I think that there's more distractions today to an 18 to 22-year-old than there was 45, 50 years ago. I think there's a little bit more focus on what you had to do and had to get straight. And there's a lot more toys to play with today. And the social media world has opened up another avenue of criticism, of pats on the back, whatever. It's coming and going that sometimes a coach has to get brought back into the new generation. And that's where somebody in their 20s could help a coach do that. But you're right. Most of the coaches today, they have 20 or more years on the player. And so that it's difficult to relate to that, a particular 21-year-old when you're 48 years old. You just grew up differently. It's a different world.